First of all, I would like to thank the organizers. It is a very pleasant feeling being part of the Lahooti Melo. This Lahooti Melo, as I understand, has now become an institution itself, or is in the process of becoming an institution. So it's a pleasure to be a part of it this year. I am Dr. Syed Jaffar Ahmed, a student of social sciences. I did my PhD in political science and taught in Karachi University. I also served the Pakistan Studies Center for 18 years as its director. At present, I am director of Institute of Historical and Social Research, and I am also Dean Faculty of Social Sciences in Sohail University. I have spent, almost half of my life, or more than half of my life, in the academia. And one thing which I have taught to the students regularly, and which I have experienced myself while traveling across the world in different universities, going to different seminars and conferences, the realization that world is a very diverse, place. And perhaps the most defining factor of this world is this, that it is not monotonous, it is not homogeneous, it is diverse. And I'm glad that this year round the Lahooti Melo has adopted diversity as its major theme. In Urdu we call it Tanavvo, and Tanavvo is a very, very wide term, like the diversity is. Tanavvu means cultural diversity, political diversity, economic diversity, and diversity in all walks of life. So I'll begin by saying that one major thing that distinguishes human life or the social life from other material world is this, that no two individuals in this world are same. No two individuals are, same. This is a world with more than 7 billion population, and what a phenomenon it is that every individual is different. And not only this, that every individual is different, or no two individuals are same, but one individual also does not stand at one particular point. Today I have one idea, tomorrow it will be changed, it may be reformed, tomorrow maybe I don't stick to this idea. So change is one factor that remains constant in this world. So keeping that in mind, if that happens with an individual, that he or she is not the same every day, similarly the societies do not remain the same, societies change. And the success of human endeavors lies in the fact that we realize this fact, that it's a diverse world, and diversity should be accommodated, should be accepted, and not only accepted, should be taken as the guiding principle for constructing whatever we want to build in this world. Your economy, your political structures, your cultural embodiments, whatever they are, if they are rooted in the belief that we are giving representation to diversity, then that thing leads towards success. That is the first step towards success. Now, having said something about diversity itself, which can be cultural, which can be political, which can be in all walks of life, as I mentioned, I'll come to Pakistan and I'll say that Pakistan is a unique country in the sense that we became independent in 1947, before which there was no country in the world called Pakistan. It was, in a sense, a new country. There had been other countries which had become colonies. Indonesia was there, it became a colony and it became independent later. Algeria was a country, it became a French colony, it became independent later. So their status as a country was already there in history. At one point of time, they became, they were colonized, and after a struggle of their people, their freedom struggles, they became independent. In the case of Pakistan, before 1947, there was nothing like Pakistan in this world. So it was a new country that was carved out of India. So there should have been some reason behind it. Generally, it is said that the Indian Muslims decided to have a different country, and Pakistan came into being on the basis of their distinct Islamic or Muslim identity. To some extent, this is true. But then there are other questions. For example, when Pakistan emerged on the map of the world, there still were almost the same number of Muslims living in India. Or later, we can say when East Pakistan got separated, and Muslims in Bangladesh, there are Muslims in Pakistan, but there are millions of Muslims in India, and which means that 1947 episode was not clear-cut demarcation of Muslims and non-Muslims, and India still is a big Muslim populated country. Now, what was there for the Muslim majority provinces which opted to become Pakistan? Sindh had its own history and culture, Punjab, East Bengal, Balochistan, Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. All these regions had their respective cultures, their identities, their languages, their cultural heritage. But then they decided to form a federation of their own, because they thought that in this federation, which they had named the Federation of Pakistan, they would have more autonomy as compared to what they were expecting in Indian Federation. So Pakistan came into being on this belief that here the cultural identity would be preserved, and the level of preservation would be more than it could have been in India. Similarly, I would say, I will put the same thing in other words, that if Pakistan opted for a federal arrangement in political sense, this political arrangement, this political federalism operates in societies which are culturally diverse, which are big. To my students, I generally explain the difference between federation and unitary states. And I say that in unitary states, we assume that the population is more of a homogeneous type of grouping, whereas in United States, in Canada, in India, in Pakistan, there are big populations, and big populations also mean that there is likelihood of more cultural, diversities and linguistic diversities. So political federalism operates well in societies which are diverse. So such societies are also called federal societies. So what I am trying to say is that Pakistan emerged as a federal society in which we had to construct federal institutions, we had to make a federal constitution, so on and so forth. So this is the historical rationale of our coming into being. And if you go further back in the history of Pakistan movement, you would find that right from the beginning, and particularly from 1919, when the Government of India Act 1919 was introduced, there had been urge on the point of the Muslim majority provinces that in the first place, the regions which had not yet become provinces, like Balochistan and Frontier, they wanted to become province. In 1919, Sindh was not a separate province, Sindh also wanted to become a province. In 1919, there was only Punjab and East Bengal which were Muslim majority provinces. By 1935, when the Act of 35 came, Sindh had opted to be separate from Bombay Presidency, and Frontier had also become a province. So that was there, and up until 1947, there had been demand on the part of the Muslim League that provincial status should be given to Balochistan also. It's a different story that after the creation of Pakistan, Balochistan had to wait for about 23 years and became a province in 1970. What I'm trying to say is that Pakistan became a reality only because the federating units made it a country. The Muslim majority provinces agreed to form a separate federation, separate from the Indian Federation. That is something that gives credence to the idea of diversity, that the acceptance of diversity was rooted in our political philosophy, that was rooted in the foundations of Pakistan. Now, the third thing which I want to bring to light is this, that how this diversity gets embodiment in practical life. I will refer to three things. First is economic, the second is political, and third is cultural. As far as economic is concerned, you know, Pakistan being a diverse society has diverse economic foundations. There are regions in Pakistan who have their own mineral resources, they have their own natural sort of resources, and they have this natural urge to use them to the maximum for their benefit. But then they also want to share it with other provinces, and they expect that other provinces economic and material belongings would be of use for them also. So, in a diverse society, the economic system determines that there should be an integrated economy, and that internal economy means that people not only invest in one or the other region, they benefit from one or the other region, and they travel in different regions. I mean, United States is a very diverse country, and it's very interesting aspect of their economic life that 80% of Americans do not live in the state of their birth. They are born in one state, they travel for education to another, for further education they travel to third state, for their job they go to the fourth state. Now, this internal migration and continuous migration within states, that becomes a source of bringing people together, and that provides the basis for the acceptance of diversity. People realize, when different people meet, they realize that every human being has good things and every human being may have bad things. So, one good thing about this diversity, which I should have talked when I would be talking about culture, that the acceptance of diversity suggests that there is no room for generalization. I just can't say that this set of people is like this and that set of people is like that. They are, that nation is hospitable, that nation is quite arrogant. These generalizations come to an end when you realize the diversity and you realize that all sorts of people are there in all communities. So, economic integration is important, and that is one way of giving embodiment to a productive embodiment to the concept of diversity. The second thing is political, and I have already mentioned a little bit about it, that in a culturally diverse society we need institutions where different people negotiate. They negotiate their interests, they negotiate their objectives, and they harmonize with each other. They find solutions to their conflicts, because every human effort, every human collective endeavor of human beings may result in some crisis, may result in some challenge. I just talked about internal migration, which in one sense is a good thing, but if internal migration becomes a one-way traffic, that people from one region keep traveling to another region, but so the people of that other region would one day realize that we are being, transformed into a minority, so they would not welcome it. So while doing all these things, things should be harmonized, and things should be managed, and political management is very important. This is the success of successful federations, that they manage their conflicts and their contradictions, and this is one important political aspect. Now finally, I would say that cultural embodiment. Cultural embodiment is very important because, in the first place, as I mentioned, there's no room for generalization. There are good people in all sets of communities. Then we should, when we come together, we realize the merits of others' cultures, what others sing, what others write, what are other communities, creative sort of presentation, and all these things become the collective, heritage of mankind. So I think that I will conclude by saying that diversity is important, realization of diversity and acceptance of it, and if I may use the term, rejoicing in being in a diverse society is quite essential for the promotion of the society, with the success and evolution of the society. And I hope that this festival ends with consolidating this message to the people who are, addressed in these days. So when we are talking about the political sort of acceptance of diversity, I would like to refer to how we have responded to this basic principle. I mean, after the creation of Pakistan, there had been a strong demand on the part of our Bengali brothers and in other provinces of the country that their cultural identities should be accepted. Their languages should be accepted. Their languages should be made national language. Unfortunately, we couldn't do that. And we have paid heavily due to that. I mean, the Bengali was accepted as the official language, but it was done much later when a lot of wrong had already been done. So I think that when we talk about the political embodiment of cultural diversities, we should focus on how our constitutions have responded to it, how the state institutions have responded to it. I mean, do we teach our students their mother tongue in their mother language? Do we promote regional, or I don't call them regional, to me all the languages of Pakistan are national languages and they should be recognized as national languages. They should be given place in the constitution as national languages, and no harm it's going to do if we do that, because there are countries in the world who have recognized in their constitutions a number of languages as the national languages. So I don't know why this idea was cultivated by the forces of centralization in this country, that if we accept Sindhi as a national language, or Balochi or Pashto or Bengali as a national language, that would weaken Pakistan. I think that wouldn't weaken Pakistan. Depriving a language of its actual national status may lead to the weakening of the state, but acceptance of it would never lead to the weakness of the state. As a student of politics, I can say it for sure that to me, I haven't seen any example, there's no one example where the acceptance of diversity would have weakened the country and would have broken the country. Countries are broken if the identities are not accepted, if the national languages are not given national status. And this has happened in many a case. So I think that it's very important to keep in mind the political and state responses towards the idea of diversity. I often listen in TV programs and in other national, programs and programs held on 14th August and 23rd March. People say, मैं पंजाबी नहीं हूँ, मैं सिंधी नहीं हूँ, मैं पश्तो पठान नहीं हूँ और बलोच, मैं पाकिस्तानी हूँ. I mean, I don't understand the logic of this. One can have multiple identities. I am a Pakistani, I am a Sindhi, I am a new Sindhi, I am a Muslim, I am a South Asian. I have so many identities and should be happy with all that. And all these identities do play some role in different backgrounds, in different circumstances. So there is no point denying one's identity, and that is very important for the political management of the diversity. And since we haven't been able to do that in the past, we have suffered a lot due to that. So when I talk about the idea of diversity, I would also like to divulge in one or two more things. I mean, as someone who has been in academia, I have traveled a lot. And one thing I have realized while visiting different universities of the world, universities take due care in promoting the idea of diversity. It is something which perhaps wouldn't have been there some 80 years back or 100 years back. But now that mankind has traveled such a long distance, our experience has increased. So now at the academic level also, there is realization that we should teach diversity to the students. There are courses, there are disciplines built around the idea of diversity, and then that reflects in their, not only in their courses, but in their way of teaching, in their exercises. In the University of Dhaka, I was very pleased to see how they are celebrating their culture and how different aspects of culture are being taught in the university as a course. Unfortunately, in Pakistan, we don't see much of that cultural, teaching, where various cultures of Pakistan would have been taught to their students along with exercises and practicals, etc., etc. So this is important. And one more thing, since this festival has something to do with the idea of the grandeur of Sindh and the Indus civilization. As a student of history, I mean, I would like to bring this thing to the limelight. Historians have worked hard to work out how the original Indus people cohabitated with the rest of the world. It was not a very enclosed society. I mean, if you read the works of Dr. Irfan Habib or many other historians, you will see the linkages were there between the Indus civilization and the civilization of Sumer in Iraq. And there had been linkages, there were trade linkages. Certain things of Sindh were found there, and their artifacts were found in the Indus Valley. So there has always been an urge in the Indus civilization, whether it was in the ancient times or medieval or whatever, to connect with the rest of the world. And connection with the rest of the world was done with the purpose of discovering what other people do and benefiting from their experiences and giving to the outside world what merits you have in your culture. So I think that this historical phenomenon of interaction with other societies is also a reflection of how diversity expresses itself at regional level and at extra regional level.